Devlin Reiley, and welcome to my first episode of Reiley's Roundup 2021. I am so fortunate to have Tim White here. Thank you so much for joining me. He's with Stafford Food Security. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you. First one of the year.
It's the first. I know it's a little. We're right at the end of the first quarter, but we made first quarter. So
but let's just get something out of the way right now.
Yeah.
2021 is going to be an awesome year.
We are going to kill it this year.
It's going to be an awesome year. I don't want to hear any more
No.
monkey business about 2020, whatever. 2021 is the year.
I'm actually calling it, I've always been called the comeback kid. I'm calling it the comeback year for all of us.
I'm an LL Cool J fan, so I say don't call it a comeback.
Okay, well, what do we call it then?
It's just continuing excellence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's let's get back to normal and let's get back to living life and let's just get back to, being a community and doing things together. So, yeah.
So I have watched you from afar with the work that you've done, and we're going to talk a lot about that, but I want to get to know Tim.
Oh, God.
So tell me, where are you from, Tim?
All over the place.
Yeah?
I'm originally from Los Angeles. I was born in Los Angeles.
All right.
Didn't stick there long. Lived all over the place. Spent a good chunk of my childhood in Flint, Michigan. Nice place, Flint, Michigan. Don't drink the water. And then spent my high school years in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Okay.
And then after I got out of school, I went back to Flint for about half a minute and got out of there.
Yeah.
And then settled over in West Michigan where I met my wife,
Okay.
Amy. When I was 19, she was 17.
Oh my gosh.
And so we've got kind of that high school sweetheart thing going. She was still in high school. I was just out. So it was a little weird, but she stalked me and she wore me down and
on the record.
She won. Oh yeah. She'll deny it. But.
So tell us how you met Amy.
So I was, even back then, I was working all the time. Right?
Yeah.
So on my own, just trying to break that cycle of poverty.
Yeah.
And so I would work 3 or 4 jobs.
Yeah.
So when I got to West Michigan, I worked in a video store. That's where you would go to get movies before they had on demand. So I'd work there at night. I'd work at a restaurant and wait tables, and then I worked at this little T-shirt shop out in Silver Lake, Michigan. It's a resort town.
Yeah.
Well, my manager at the T-shirt store was my wife's sister, Lisa.
Okay.
So, Amy would come in to, drop stuff off for her sister, and she'd flirt.
Right, yeah.
And she'd forget her shoes, so she had to come back.
Of course.
And she asked me out, and I said, yeah, why not? And
wow, go girl. That's awesome.
She knows a catch when she sees one, Devlin.
Oh my God. Okay, we got to exit the room for his ego to take my seat.
I'm kidding. She's the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
So you guys met when you were 19, she was 17, and what happened after that?
Life.
Yeah.
I was, again, working all the time.
Right.
I started my construction business when I was about 24.
Wow.
We got married.
Yeah.
We got married, had a couple of kids. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I was working at a lumber yard selling lumber, and then I was on the nights and weekends. I was building garages, decks, whatever.
Yeah.
And she said, I'd like to have you home more, so why don't you pick one or the other?
Yeah.
And I decided to go completely out on my own, and she's like, no, pick the other one, because we're very different.
But you were already there. You were gone on your own.
Well, so the difference between Amy and me is Amy likes steady, predictable security.
Yeah.
I have never had that in my life, and I'm definitely of the opinion that if you want to win big, you got to risk big.
Yeah.
But calculated risk, right?
Smart.
Doesn't mean do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But you got to have things on the line if you really want to, capitalize and gain things.
Absolutely.
So I took the risk and I built my construction business, and we did very well.
Wow.
And then this thing called 9/11 happened, and overnight my business was almost destroyed because my custom niche was building lakeshore homes on Lake Michigan.
Wow.
Well, after 9/11, nobody wanted to build $1 million home because they were worried about the stock market and everything else. So we managed, though. We picked up some subcontracting, things like that. But then the Iraq war started heating up, right?
Yeah.
So now we were going to go get some payback. And I saw these 17, 18, 19-year-old kids getting ready to go off to war. Now, backtracking to when I graduated high school, the Gulf War had just ended. I had always thought about doing the military.
Yeah.
I've got, my grandfather was a Marine, my brother was in the Army, Dad was in the Navy. That had always seemed like a path for me, but 1993, I dated myself, I'm graduating high school, and Bill Clinton's in office. He's drawing down the military. The Gulf War had just ended.
Yep.
It's just no need for me to go in the military then.
Right.
Now, fast forward to 2002, after
Yeah.
9/11,
Yep.
you know, and I turned to Amy and I said, I'm going to join the Marines. And she's like, you're insane. We have
Yeah.
3 kids. You're not joining the Marine Corps. I said, listen, bad folks brought bad things here.
Right.
I would rather fight them over there than over here.
Right.
So long story short, sold my construction business and joined the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And when I'm in the recruiter's office, he's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, you're a smart guy. You scored very well. We're going to put you in like engineering or something like that. I was like, no, infantry. And he's like, what? I said, listen, if I want to sit behind a desk, I'll stay back here and make money.
Yeah.
So I did. I joined the Marine Corps. My intent was to do, 4 years, serve my country. Ended
Yeah.
up staying in for about 10 years.
Wow.
And I was 28 when I went in. So I was an old man for going into the Marine Corps, starting out, right?
Jeez.
And then my last duty station in the Marine Corps brought me here to Quantico. And
Yeah.
we settled here in Stafford. And I got out in 2013. And once we'd been here for a few years, I knew this was home.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in you take care of your home, right?
Right.
So I started looking around and finding things that I could do in the community and
Yeah.
volunteering and things. And that kind of led to where we are today.
You said something about always working several jobs
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't necessarily have like that stability growing up.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Why? Because there are people that don't do for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people that get handed so much in life like against them, and they still find a way to
Mm-hmm.
get past it. So, what do you think it was that it was instilled in you?
So it didn't come from my family because my parents were the ones that could never make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, rough childhood, abusive parents, alcoholic parents. I mean, I've made my peace with that,
Yeah.
But I realized early on, number one, I was a voracious reader. So I was reading about all these different worlds and all these different lives that people
Yeah.
led. And something in me said that I could have that.
Yeah.
But some of the books I read, like reading books by like Louis L'Amour about the people that settled the West, and
Yeah.
Zane Grey, and just all of these characters in history who had overcome everything
Yeah.
and were successful. And it occurred to me that I could change my circumstances, right? That's the great thing about this country.
Yeah.
As much as we've been tearing it apart for the last year and fighting about color and everything else, at the end of the day, if you're willing to dig in and work hard, you can do anything here.
Yeah.
And I'm quite honestly living proof of that.
Yeah.
So I went from nothing, living in, the ghettos of Flint and LA and all kinds of places. And now today, I use it as an example. I have 4 kids,
Yeah.
3 of which are grown. 2 have graduated college debt free.
Wow.
I mean, and I've got my degree debt free. And we do very well for ourselves now.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself wealthy by any means, probably because I'm always giving it away, because we have what we need.
You have a
know what I
fulfilling
mean?
life, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my family's provided for. My kids
Yeah.
have gotten experiences that I could have only ever dreamed of. So for us, what I call this, it's not I call it,
Yeah.
the cycle of poverty has
Yeah.
been broken.
Yeah.
And what I want to do now going forward with
Mm-hmm.
some of the families that we help
Yep.
is show them how to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not some hoity-toity guy in a suit who's going to stand up here and say, you need to make better decisions.
Right.
I'll be like, listen, man, I was where you are.
Right.
I mean, when I grew up, we didn't have food in the house, but there was always a fifth of Southern Comfort and a carton of Marlboros, So I'd be going hungry. Mom and Dad would be scraping quarters together to buy a pack of smokes. Stupid decision making,
Yeah.
right? So, number one, I knew as soon as I had kids, I knew I would never make that decision.
Yeah.
I would always choose my kids over my own needs.
Yeah.
And there were times, quite honestly, that I had to do that.
Yeah.
$5, and I was a smoker when I was younger.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I didn't have any gas to get to work. I had $5 to my name, and my kid needed to go on. Well, didn't need to, but wanted to go on a pumpkin trip. Right?
Field trip.
Needed
School.
$5 to go buy a pumpkin.
Wow.
So I called a buddy for a ride to work. I went without smokes that day, and my kid got a pumpkin. So right, it's your priorities in
Yeah.
life where you're going to assign
Yeah.
your value, your time, your money, your effort, whatever. And for me, it's always been my kids and my family. When I say
Yeah.
family, I'm talking my wife and kids. Right?
Yeah.
Now, there was a time I tried to help out my brothers and
Yeah.
my parents, but eventually you keep throwing money into a black hole, right?
Yeah.
And then there's this other thing that I like to talk about called the crabs in a bucket syndrome.
Okay.
When you come from neighborhoods like I do, people will tell you, what are you doing? Why are you trying to go to college? Like,
Yeah.
you're white trash. We don't do stuff like that. People from this neighborhood don't go to college. And the more you're surrounded by those people, if you ever actually put real crabs in a bucket and you watch them, they could climb out easily.
Yeah.
But what happens is the crabs in the bottom of the bucket keep pulling the other ones down. This is a
Wow.
real biological phenomenon that happens.
Never heard of it,
Yeah.
but that I get it.
Yeah, and that's what happens in our communities, right?
Yeah.
So I was constantly called a sellout, goody two-shoes, think I'm better than everybody else. But at the end of the day, it was I had a vision, I knew where I wanted to be, and I executed it. So the other side of that is faith,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, and I believe that God had a plan for me.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to really fall in line with that plan.
Yeah.
Because in my youth, I thought I knew better than he
Of course.
does. And that caused a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But I had this traumatic incident happen while I was in the Marine Corps. My leg was shattered. And I almost got separated from the Marine Corps because they said I wouldn't walk again.
Wow.
And I was fighting it. I was so angry. And while this was happening, I missed a deployment with my buddies.
Yeah.
My buddies were coming back home in caskets, and I'm going to their funerals, and I'm like, what? Why is
Yeah.
God doing this to me?
Right.
And eventually, I had a pastor friend of mine that spent a lot of time with me, and I kind of reconciled, and I said, okay, God, you win. You tell me what to do, and I'll do it. I made a decision at that point. I think I was 31, somewhere
Yeah.
around there. I said, from now on, you open a door, I'm going to walk through it, no questions asked.
Yeah.
And not to get too religious about all this, but it does drive where I am today.
Yeah.
Came out of that. Hindsight's 20/20, right? And we always talk about if you could ever look at the world, for us, it's like looking at the back of a tapestry, right? We see
Yeah.
all these crazy lines and tassels and everything else,
Yeah.
but if you flip it over, it's this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it at the time, but while that deployment that I missed, my fire team and everyone on it were killed.
Wow.
Fast forward, I did heal. I was able to stay in the Marine Corps, and I got asked to deploy with another unit where I did some incredible work over there.
Yeah.
Made my move from infantry to intelligence, which launched the career that I have today that I get paid very well for.
Yeah.
And so all of those events happened for a reason.
They do.
And if you go back, I can even now, in my hindsight, and in the wisdom of my years, go back and say that all those things that happened to me as a kid, I approach everything I do with Stafford Food Security from the lens of those kids.
Yeah.
Right? I never got Capri Suns. I never got a whole meal. I never got, treated like a human being.
Yeah.
So everything we do is with that mindset, right? Of like, hey, what would little Tim want? You
Yeah.
know? And so we come from that perspective. And then I can also kind of see all of the obstacles that are going to be in our way, right?
Yeah.
Mom and dad that are too proud to ask for help.
Yeah.
No problem. I'm not going to wait for you to ask. Here's the food.
Yeah.
Let me bring it to your neighborhood where your neighbors are eating it and you're eating it, and there is no shame, no
Right.
stigma, no nothing, right?
Right.
So I've got all of that perspective that helps me. I lived in Mexican barrios. I lived in black ghettos. I lived in, Vietnamese refugee neighborhoods,
Yeah.
So talk about diversity. I've lived diversity my whole life.
Yeah.
A lot of times growing up, we were the only white family for miles.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I know what it feels like to be a minority, but there were times that I had that impact. But I understand the culture, I understand the people. When I go out into some of our neighborhoods and I can speak enough Spanish to communicate,
Yeah.
they appreciate that, So all of those experiences, even though, some people look back and be like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm like, nah, I wouldn't be who I am today
Right.
without those experiences. So that's who Tim White is.
But where do you, why? Why do you think you had the will to break the cycle?
It's a choice.
Yeah.
That's all it boils down to is a
Yeah.
choice. I'll sometimes tell the story of my three brothers, right? There's, two brothers, there's three of us. I'm the middle one.
Yeah.
Right? So my older
Middle
brother.
child, hold on.
What's up?
What's up? What's up?
So my older brother, who I actually looked up to, and
Yeah.
I still actually have a good relationship with to this day, his way of dealing with it all was to escape, right? So he chose a very defensive mode. He left home at 17, joined the Army, never looked back.
Wow.
His reaction was, I'm going to put this wall up and nobody's
Right.
ever going to hurt me again.
Right.
Effective. He got out. He's very successful. Retired from the Veterans Administration. He does fine for himself financially. He's doing well.
Right.
But
Quality of
socially, quality
Yeah.
of life.
Yeah.
Then there's my little brother. Everything that happened was somebody else's fault. I simply said, you know what? I kind of took a little bit of my old brother. For a while, I had that armor, right?
Yeah.
But Amy tore that up.
Yeah.
Amy just chewed that right up. So she's still the only one who gets all the way in. And I was actually just telling her this morning, I was like, do you realize how much power you have over me? I would never give that power to anybody else, right? But in the last 5 years or so, I've made a conscious effort. Again, and you can edit this out if you want to, but going back to that Christian principle, right?
Yeah.
Jesus says our greatest commandment is to love God and then love your neighbor as you would love yourself.
Yeah.
I've never been able to do that because I was always so cautious and guarded.
Right.
And about 5 years ago, I realized that was impacting my relationship with God. And I said, you know what? I need to start loving on people.
Yeah.
And I need to open myself up to people. And I've always been into service, right? I've always been into helping people.
Right.
But not like I am now.
Yeah.
And it's just been an incredible growth opportunity for me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people always say, I can't believe you don't get paid anything for doing Stafford Food Security. I don't get paid any money. But man, I have built some relationships out here in Stafford, Spotsy, King George. You know, everywhere I go, people are like, hey, you're the food security guy. I'm like, yeah, you know. And I never want it to be about me.
Right.
But I've been blessed. You know, I mean, it's just been such a great opportunity. But back to that, the three of us. I, number one, anchored in faith. That helped tremendously. Number two, I said, I am responsible for what happens to me. I get to make the choices.
Right.
And the power of choice, I mean, there's tons of books out there by guys smarter than me on the power of choice. It's not easy.
Right.
But no matter what we do, we always have a choice, right?
Yeah.
People say, I got to go to work. I'm choosing to go to work today.
Right.
I can choose not to go to work. I'm just going to have to deal with the consequences.
Right.
So it goes back to that calculated risk thing.
Right.
For me, every decision that comes before me, I go, what happens? And it's a very quick process. I'm gifted that way. But it's like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that?
Right.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't always know what's going to happen, but so I teach leadership. Right?
Yeah.
This is one of the things I teach people. If you want to be successful, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's where you grow.
That's right. And I know you're from the Y, and I see you in the gym doing stuff, right? So what's rule number one of the gym, right? No pain, no gain.
If you don't like it, do 4 sets
That's
of it.
right.
And that's
right.
what my yes.
and if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right.
Exactly.
So,
if you're not hating your life.
That's right. And then the minute you get comfortable, you get complacent.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you got to retrain in a different way. Okay.
So the key to growth is being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But eventually you get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I tell people all the time, like, so for me, anytime I start to feel comfortable, I'll take something else on.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know, I'll start a nonprofit and feed 20 kids. Let's go ahead and feed 25,000 kids.
Tell me more about how Stafford Food Security did start.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I reached a point where I had too much time on my hands. So there's another aspect of it.
Is that real?
What's that? Too much time on my hands?
Yeah, no way.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody has too much time on their hands.
Yeah.
If you actually look at what you do with your time, I could sit down with you and go through your day minute by minute, and you'd be like, I'm wasting so much time.
Actually, you might need to do that.
Right? So this is what I do for myself.
Yeah.
I caught myself, and I didn't even know it was happening, right? And so I'll share another story. I think I shared it with Tim last time I was in here. Is part of what I do is a result of PTSD.
Okay.
Now, my PTSD manifests itself in different ways than others. Some people have guilt. I have no guilt. I'm right with my God. I'm good with what I did. But my body and my mind went through changes in all my combat tours that we worked 24-hour ops.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times that I would go 3-4 days straight, until I'm hallucinating and seeing cats, and somebody locks me in a room and says, sleep for 6 hours,
Wow.
Because it's life or death, right?
Yeah.
If I don't get this intel report and this mission's not planned right, my Marines are going to die.
Yeah.
Or if I don't practice kicking this door in and I go in left when I should have went right, my Marines are going to die.
Right.
So it's a very crazy mindset up in here, right? But it's very intense.
Yeah.
So I come back from that, and now I work at a desk for 8 hours a day.
Your level of adrenaline raised, and it's like your body needs that, doesn't it?
It's not as much about being an adrenaline junkie, but
Yeah.
when I sit still, all I think about is what I could have done.
Oh, man.
I could have done this. I could
Yeah.
have done that, right? And your mind starts messing with you.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that I distracted myself was to play video games, right?
Okay.
Got into this group, some buddies of mine were playing an online video game, and all hours of the night, and one of them asked me, he's like, man, you're really good at this. He goes, how many hours you got in this game? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, click this button. I clicked the button, I had something like 2,800 hours. And I forget, I did the math, it's something like a month.
Wow.
A month of my life was spent playing this video game in a 6-month period. And I'm just like, okay, is this what God wants me doing with my life, is playing with digital trons? And I said, this is enough. I said, because nothing's bad until you do it to excess, right?
Yeah.
And that's clearly excess.
Yeah.
So I said, I've got to find a way to put all this energy I have to use.
Yeah.
So I went to my pastor at my church that I just started attending, over at New Hope, and I said, hey, Teresa, you got to find me something to do. I don't think I'm doing what God wants me to do. I've got this nagging feeling, and my hands are just, the idle hands do the devil's work.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't doing the devil's work.
No, yeah.
But I wasn't making productive use of my time
Right.
either. So I said, I used to build houses. I was in the Marine Corps. I've got lots of different skills. Find me something to do that's going to help people.
Yeah.
And so she connected me with UMCOR, the United Methodist Committee of Relief. You remember when the tornadoes went through Tappahannock a few years back? So UMCOR was involved in rebuilding a lot of those homes. So there was this old man out in Tappahannock. He was like 80-some years old, Mr. Johnson. His house had been destroyed, and the church was going to build a house for him. But here we were in February.
Yeah.
He needed to be in his home by the end of April. Nobody would go out and work because it was cold. So I said, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And so I drove down to Tappahannock. I met with the pastor that was leading it, and I said, let me see the blueprints.
Yeah.
I opened up the blueprints, and I said, oh, yeah, if we were working on this full time, I could turn this around in 30 days, but I can definitely get him in there by April.
Yeah.
He's like, no way. I said, yeah, it's gonna take a little bit longer because I can only work the weekends,
Yeah.
So I went back to church. I said, have the lumber here on Friday. I'll put the floor down on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because you can't put the floor down in a day. I was like, whatever.
We're not asking
I said,
you.
just have the lumber
yeah.
here. Yeah. So I went back and I got like 4, 5, 6 guys from my church. I said, what, you guys are gonna come out and help me? I said, I didn't ask them. I said, you're gonna come out and help me.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go help this old man. They're like, okay.
Yeah.
And we got out there and we put the floor down, and everybody had a blast. Took a bunch of pictures, called the pastor, and I said, hey, floor's done. Have the walls here on Friday. Have the lumber here on Friday. I'll put the walls up on Saturday. He's like, okay, I'm not questioning you this time, but he said, that's a lot of walls. And I'm like, whatever. So the next day, Sunday, I put this little PowerPoint presentation I got in front of the church, and I said, hey, y'all are going to help me build this house. I said, because I can't do it alone, and this needs to be done.
Yeah.
And there's this mentality of, we're a small church. We can't do big things. Baloney.
Yeah.
Baloney.
Yeah.
You absolutely can't. I realize my whisper probably didn't catch on the mic. But so got the church fired up. We took 12 people out that next Saturday. All the walls were up. Called, said, have the roof here. The next Saturday, had about 30 people out there. So it just kept snowballing.
Yeah.
Right? And long story short, we got this house built. It was awesome. But it was in Tappahannock. And then there wasn't another one to build. The other ones were like way down by Richmond or something.
Right.
I wanted to do something closer to home.
Yeah.
Because I have this philosophy of, you have to take care of your own backyard before you worry about anybody else's.
Right.
And this is the problem that we get into, right? Especially nowadays in 2021.
Yeah.
I'm so busy worried about what Devlin's doing and what Shondel's doing and what Tim's doing that I'm not worried about what Tim's doing.
Yeah.
And so I said, let's worry about our own backyard. And so I started looking around Stafford. And I live over here in White Oak.
Yeah.
Over here, we're in Spotsy now, but I live in White
I'm
Oak.
a White Oaker.
Nice.
I'm on the
I
King
knew I
George
liked
line, though.
you. That's okay.
I know, but
Pass up a tansy?
yeah.
I'm
Yes.
with you. It's funny because I've only been here 10 years, but most people think I've been here my whole life.
Yeah.
That's that adaptability that I have of moving around.
Yeah.
Plus, anyway. So I said, what can I do around here? So we actually did a couple of kitchen remodels for some people out on 218
Yeah.
and for a senior gentleman. And I said, this is good, but
Yeah.
still not feeling it.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, my wife was sharing a story. She was a para at Conway Elementary at the time.
Okay.
And she was like, this little boy was just, I don't know, he was acting weird in class today. And I said, it sounds like he's hungry. She's like, no.
And you would know that feeling.
Yeah. And so I said, here's what happens, different things like this, kids will do this. And she said, oh my gosh. And this light bulb clicked. And she's like, I hate you. And I'm like, why? She's like, because you're right.
Wow.
And so it was the story of this little boy that was making pine cone bird. They were supposed to be making these pine cone bird feeders, right? You take the pine cone, you put the peanut butter on it, and you put the bird seed on it. He was licking the peanut butter off the pine cone. She's like, I kept telling him to stop. And I'm like, that's probably the first time he's seen peanut butter in God knows how long, So I said, okay, here's what we can do. I said, I'm gonna find a way to do this. And I got a hold of JR, the principal over there, and I said, I want to do something for the kids in your school.
Yeah.
I know you got hungry kids here. He goes, yeah, we do. He said, not a lot, but we have some. And I said, okay, so I've got this idea. I'm gonna put a complete dinner that will feed the whole family, and I'll do all the work. All I need is your teachers to hand it to the kids, because if you call the parents, they're gonna say, no, everything's fine. Just send it home. Don't ask.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, you're the principal, man. He's like, okay, that's a good point. And we actually worked up a little letter to kind of cover him. He and I drafted it together, and it's basically, it says, hey, we saw a need. If we're wrong, we apologize. But if we're right, keep it. It's a gift, no questions asked.
Yeah.
If you need more help, please call us. And so there's this, I learned a lot of this in my time in the Middle East, but also from reading voraciously. There's power in breaking bread with someone. There's power in a meal, right? So rule number 1, we don't distribute food bags.
Yeah.
I hate the word food bags.
Yeah.
You know what does a food bag make you think of?
I mean, a food bag?
If say strap on a feed bag or food bag.
I mean, animals.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
right? It's what you put on an animal.
Yeah.
Are children animals?
No.
No, but when you say here's a food bag, there's a psychological link. And then when it's crap that came out of your cupboard because you were cleaning your cupboard out when you were making donations,
it's the worst.
there's a psychological thing that says, I'm garbage. People are giving me garbage because I'm garbage.
They're leftovers, the unwanted.
Yeah, this is the stuff that nobody else wanted. And a friend of mine, Rod Rodriguez, who was the first podcast I ever did, he also grew up very poor. And we were having this conversation of I remember thinking, wow, Capri Suns, that's what the rich kids drink, For him, it was a completely different situation. In his mind, it was what the real kids drank. He never thought himself as a real person.
Oh my God.
That's what these little kids are thinking, man. And then they grow up, they become teenagers, and it becomes anger, and it becomes resentment, and then they don't conform to society, and then they find a gang that says, hey man, we'll take care of you, come over here. I mean, not that we have a big gang problem here in Fredericksburg, we have some. But that's the mentality, right? That you like, the world doesn't care about me, why should I care about the world? So I wanted to shake that paradigm up a little bit, right? What if I can crack through that kid and say, you know what, I care about you and I don't even know you. And then 10 years from now he says, you know what, man, screw the world, it doesn't care. Well, there was that one guy, or there was that one group, or there was that one dinner that, we can make a difference, right? We can plant seeds that hopefully will sprout into something.
Absolutely.
And if they don't, hey, I fed a kid for a day. For a day, that kid didn't have to go to bed hungry, because that's a horrible feeling too,
So when you sent those letters home, did you get calls?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'd be like, hey, don't send these. We don't need these. Even though we knew damn well they did.
So you started at the school. How did it grow?
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
So started at Conway there. I mean, and it's funny too, because I started this, with like $200 out of my own pocket. I'm like, I can drop $200. That's not a big deal. And then after about a month, maybe not even that. Terry Rivero, the principal up at Rock Hill Elementary, calls me and she says, hey, I heard about this thing you're doing at Conway. We have some needy kids up here. Is there any way you can do that up here? And I'm like, yes. Yeah. Because remember my deal with God. You open a door, I'm going to walk through it. And Amy, of course, the non-risk one's like, how are you going to do that? Yeah. I'm like, that's another $200,
Yeah.
We can afford it. She's like, but we did.
Yeah.
And then a week later, if you know where Rock Hill sits, Garrison Elementary is like right next to it.
Yeah.
So Allison calls me and says, hey, we need that too. And I'm like, oh crap. Okay, now we're snowballing.
Yeah.
So I started a little Facebook thing and I said, hey, anybody want to get in on this? Here's $50, here's $100, here's $100. I said, oh, well, if we're going to do this right, I'd better go and, actually, at that point I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the food bank and I'm going to see if I can get some food from them. They told me no. They've straight up told me no. So if you ever hear me not have a good relationship with the food bank, it goes back to when I was starting. And they were the biggest obstacle I had. I was like, you have food here that's going into dumpsters. I'm trying to give it to kids. Why won't you give it to me? They said, well, you're not a 501c3. Cool, be right back. Went out, became a 501c3. Cool. Now I can solicit donations and I can give people a receipt for taxes.
Right.
I go back to the food bank and I go, there you go, I'm a 501c3. Let me get some of that food. No. What do you mean no? You don't have a building. I was like, well, what do I need a building for? I'm putting the food in the schools. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. All right. be right back. I go to my pastor, and I'm like, hey, can I use the church? We've got that one room over there.
Yeah.
We used a little room, and that's what we operated out of for like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I go back to the food bank, and I'm like, hey, look. And I took my pastor with me. I said, because you're going to have to keep me from killing these people, because they've now wasted 3 days of my time.
Yeah. You did all this in 3 days?
No. I mean, cumulative total.
But still,
Did it in about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's still not, but I mean, jeez.
Save that point, because we'll come back to it, right? I kind of want to go into it now. Don't forget it.
I won't forget it. Okay.
Time. So we go back, and they still said no. And they said backpack programs don't work. And I said, well, funny you mention that, because I did my research, and the reason why backpack programs don't work, and they're right, they don't, when you send home snacks for a kid.
Yeah.
So imagine sending a bag that has a can of Chef Boyardee ravioli and a granola bar and a juice to a family of 6 people.
Yeah.
What happens there?
I mean, how are you going to split it up, right?
It has no impact by the time you're done. I said the trick is to feed the whole family. And that's why our backpack program is different, because it's got all of the ingredients to make a good, healthy meal that meets the food pyramid requirements and feeds
For a
4
family.
people.
Yeah.
And if the family's bigger than 4 people, guess what?
We'll get more.
Send 2 bags.
Yeah.
It ain't rocket science.
Yeah.
I work at Dahlgren. They do rocket science out there. This ain't it.
This is not
this
it.
This ain't it. So I said, you know what, Fredericksburg Food Bank, I'm going to succeed in spite of you. If not because of you, I will succeed in spite of you.
Okay.
And I set out, and it was honestly, it was like a little motivating factor.
Yeah.
'Cause I got you now.
Yeah.
So we went out, and we started going gangbusters. We went from 2 schools to 3 schools to by the 3 months later. So we started in March. By the end of the school year, we were in 13 schools. Over the course of the summer, I swept all of Stafford County. When we started the school year in August, we were in all 25 Stafford schools.
Wow.
In December of that year, I got my first Spotsy school, which I just delivered to today, Spotswood Elementary.
That's awesome.
And then started sweeping into northern Spotsylvania County.
Yeah.
And then, I met Elizabeth from the Y.
My COO.
She called me in, and so here's another one of those God moments, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, hey, we've got this Power Scholars program.
Yep.
She's telling me about what that is, and I'm like, that sounds so cool.
Yep.
I love it. You're giving these kids the tools they need to succeed.
Yep.
She goes, we've got books, we've got teachers, we've got volunteers. We don't have a way to feed the kids. And I'm like, is that what you're asking me to do? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, huh. So I'm doing some quick mental math. I'm like, 80 kids, 5 days a week, 5 weeks long. It's going to be about $5,000. Okay. I did not have $5,000.
But you went and found it, didn't you?
Yep.
Jeez.
So,
how long did it take you?
a week.
Wow.
That's the great thing about our community, right?
Yeah.
So I think what works for us, and kind of my pact with the community, if you will, I'm never going to BS anybody, right?
No. Straight shooter.
Here's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah.
It's going to cost this much money. Help me raise that much money. This community will give. They want an outlet and to give that they know they can trust.
Yeah.
And so we open the floodgates. And then the other thing is if I don't need it, I'm not going to ask you for it. Right?
Yeah.
So you won't see me every day going, donate to Stafford Food Security.
Right.
Now, if I need money, you're going to see, donate to Stafford
But
Food
when
Security.
we see that, we know
That's
you
right.
need it.
That's right. I don't cry wolf.
Yeah.
And I've always told people since day one, this is not how you do your home finances, but this is how you do a nonprofit's finance.
Yeah.
The goal is to be broke.
Yeah.
If I don't want to be sitting around with $100,000 in the bank, because that's not helping anybody.
Right.
Now we are at a point now where it's a little bit different, because I have a lease, and I've got to be ready to prepare
For the future.
repair the food truck, and I'm
We
feeding
won't say it, but
thousands of
last
people.
year, I mean, you have to be prepared for things like that.
So let's talk about last year.
How did that affect you?
I hate to say it almost, but it was amazing for us.
Well, that's okay.
Because-
I want to hear these stories where you guys thrive.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and the reason we did, so I'm gonna make a lot of people mad right now.
Okay.
The whole hashtag stay home thing, that's great when you live in a $400,000 house and have everything that you need.
Yeah.
There are people out there that cannot stay home, and if they miss a day's work, they're going hungry.
And the children, though.
Oh my gosh.
We were worried about children.
The psychological impacts,
Yep.
the safe harbor issues,
Yep.
all of that stuff. We haven't been able to really impact the safe harbor thing. The food thing I've been able to mitigate,
Yeah.
and bring a little bit of bright spots here and there.
Yeah.
But so when COVID happened, number one, it flipped my whole business model on its ear, right?
Yeah.
Because my business model is, so most food pantries, and I love my food pantries, and I give to food pantries all the time.
Yeah.
I share resources, stuff like that. But Not the food bank, the food pantries. So their model is, we have food, come and get it. Well, there are a lot of people that can't come and get it.
Right.
A kid can't drive to the food bank and get food, right? And if mom's too drunk, lazy, or stoned to go and get it, then what, you know? So that's our niche, right? That's what makes us different. If you're going to start an organization, you can't do the same thing that everybody else does, right? I mean, there's always room for another food pantry, I guess, but we didn't want to just, you know, be another one of those. We wanted to fill a gap because there was a need there.
Yeah.
So that was why I went to the schools, because my teachers are my little recon scouts.
Of course they are.
They're with these kids all day long.
And they care.
Oh, yeah.
And they notice.
And they know who the hungry kids are.
Yeah.
And I do a little bit of education with some of them.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there are signs. I mean, I can walk into a room, watch a kid for 10 minutes and go, that kid's hungry.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not 10 minutes. I need to see him a little bit more.
Yeah.
But if I were with them every day, day in and day out, you betcha.
Yeah.
Watch them in the cafeteria. The ones that put food in their pockets. The ones that wolf their food down. The ones that eat things that nobody else will. I always joke and say catfish nuggets. And then I found a bunch of people that are like, I love catfish nuggets. I'm like, oh. But, you know, somebody's always going to like something. But,
Yeah.
So being able to identify those kids, teachers kind of already have that skill set. And they're opportunely placed. So that's my distribution system, right? So that all fell apart when the kids got pulled out of school. So again, you know, Marine Corps, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Right as they announced that the schools were going to close, I reached out to Dr. Kisner and I said, hey, kids are going to need to eat. Yeah. I'm here to help in Stafford County. And I tried to have similar conversations with Spotsy and King George. I just don't have the relationships that I do in Stafford. But so then I sent an email out to every principal in all the counties, and I said, hey, here's the deal. I know the kids aren't there. Give out all the backpacks you have. But if somebody calls you and tells you they're hungry, ask them for permission to give me their contact info. I will bring them groceries. Yeah. And that's what we did. We had just leased the building on Deacon Road. Wasn't even done with construction. Wow. Threw the doors open, said, hey, everybody bring us food, and we're going to take and deliver it to people. And I took all these teachers that were off of work, put them to work. So I had teachers running food out to kids. Oh. And it was amazing.
That's amazing.
But in the process of doing that was what led us to where we are today, because I'll use River Heights as my prime example, because I got a call from one of the Spotsy schools, and they had a family in need. And I don't know if you know where River Heights Trailer Park is, but it's right over off of 2.
I'm familiar with that area.
You know where the airport is?
Yes.
Across the street from the airport, across 2.
Yeah.
No idea. I've been here 10 years, had no idea it was there.
Yeah, because I see houses right off the road, smaller houses.
But there's a big trailer park right back in there. So I'm making a delivery back in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm delivering to one family. I guarantee you there are more. Yeah. And that's when I got the idea of, what if I just fed everybody?
Okay. You're reminding me of what was it? The ghost of the present in the Christmas Carol, where he has just food everywhere at the party. No.
Yeah, kinda.
He wasn't giving it away, so maybe not.
Well, but so. Okay, let's go with that. Hold that for a second. So that's what most people would say, right? You can't do that.
I'm not saying you can't, but
I don't
how?
think like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So I made my delivery, and as I'm coming back, I see this woman and her kids out in the yard, and they're Salvadoran. And so I was like, hola, ¿cómo estás? Yeah. And she's like, bien, bien. And I said, hey, I need your help. What do you think the neighbors would do if I came in here with a great big grill and just gave free food away? She's like, estoy loco?
Yeah.
So I said, well, no, seriously. I said, I can get a grill, and I'm happy to come in here and just feed everybody. And she said, well, maybe if you set up over at the church across the street, we could tell people, and that's what we did. So that was our first cookout. Wow. I borrowed a grill from our church that Charlie Jett uses to smoke meat on. It's a big toe-behind grill. Yeah. It's old, So after the first couple, I realized I was going to need something bigger. So I ended up driving up to Pennsylvania and buying a $9,000 grill that we used all last summer. Wow. But again, I reached out to the community and said, hey, I want to buy a grill. I need donations. There it was.
So you did that in different communities?
So we started it in April of last year. We started going neighborhood. And now today, every Tuesday and Thursday, with the exception of today, because today was the 5th Tuesday, so my schedule was off. We go to a different neighborhood and we just feed the entire neighborhood. And that's how last summer we fed over 25,000 people between delivering groceries to homes and going around and doing cookouts. So last week I did 3 cookouts. We did Tuesday. We were in Garrison Woods up in North Stafford. Fed just shy of 200 people up there. And then Wednesday night, we every fourth Wednesday of the month, we cook for Micah's homeless community. And I do my famous Micah meatloaf. All the residents love it.
Oh, that's so cool.
And they'll tell me things like, man, he's like, man, some groups they come in here, they just give us like cold sandwiches.
Right.
He's like, dude, you do. And I do.
An actual meal.
I feed them the way I would feed my family, right?
Nobody should be deprived of that.
You can't have meatloaf without mashed potatoes.
Oh.
And you can't have mashed potatoes without gravy. And you can't have gravy without green beans.
Right.
And no self-respecting Southerner is making green beans without throwing a pound of bacon in there. So it's got the bacon in there. Wow. And then we throw in rolls and we take sodas. And the table at St. George, since they haven't been able to do, they've been providing me for almost a year now.
Yeah.
Every Monday, I get a shipment of fresh apples, oranges, and bananas.
That's fantastic.
And I take those out to the cookouts. So now people are getting fresh fruit.
Yep.
And then I have, for like the Micah meal, I have another volunteer. She cooks up like 8 cakes and pies, so we can actually deliver homemade desserts to these folks. Mm-hmm. We go that extra mile, right? I mean, some people would say, oh, give them a pack of crackers. It'll fill their belly. Shut up.
Yeah.
Why do you want a pack of crackers? I don't want a pack of crackers.
Only if I'm on a diet.
I want a big greasy cheeseburger with some French fries. And so a couple of times last year, I had several food trucks that came out and helped me. Pork Junkies, Hot Plate, Solific Seafood, and Family Food Palace.
Where are they all local?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you say those again?
Pork Junkies, awesome guy named TC. Hot Plate, Patrick. Family Food Palace, my buddy Tony. I just saw him today, actually. He's over on Lafayette over here.
Yeah.
He hooked me up. He's like, hey, I got something for you. His soul rolls. Oh, my gosh.
Soul rolls.
Soul rolls.
Okay.
Listen, if you have not had soul rolls
from
Family Food Palace, you are missing out on life.
Okay.
And then Solific Seafood. Marcus with Solific Seafood.
They all have food trucks.
Yep, and they said, well, Marcus was the first one. He's like, hey man, I want to roll with you, and so I said, I'll tell you what, man, I'll buy the food, you provide the truck, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Now, their food trucks could not keep up with the demand.
Wow.
So what I do is I take my grill, they bring the food truck out, I'll flip burgers and hot dogs, and they'll do French fries and chicken nuggets for me. And it worked very well. Yeah. Problem is, these guys need to make money with their food trucks.
Absolutely.
But they would at least, all of them at least once a month would volunteer a night to come out and help me. I wanted to bring a food truck every time I went out.
Right.
So I put together this little proposal, and I said, man, if I could get 5 sponsors that each gave me $10,000, I could get a food truck. And I sent that out to a few people that have been good to us. And Ebenezer United Methodist Church was the first one to say, we're in.
Wow.
No questions asked, handed me $10,000 and bought me a little toy truck, which I was going to bring today, but I forgot it. I brought it yesterday because I was thinking I was supposed to be here yesterday. But anyway,
oh, no.
Don't worry. That's me. And then, so again, right, that stepping out in faith thing.
Yeah.
I got the $10,000. I went ahead and ordered the truck.
Of course you did.
Amy was like, what are you doing? We still need like $45,000. And I was like, don't worry about it. It'll come. And the next day we were driving up to Michigan for vacation, and I get a phone call, and it's Pastor Jerry from Mount Ararat, who I had met with the week before. He goes, hey, Tim, just calling to let you know Mount Ararat's on board. We're going to send you a check for $10,000.
Wow.
I was like, good thing, because I already ordered it. He goes, wow.
Yeah.
And then I get a phone call from a guy from the North Stafford Rotary, Sean. He's like, hey, man, I work up here in HR at Sheehy Toyota, and Toyota wants to put some money into the community. And I said, awesome. He's like, can you call my general manager? I was like, sure. So I called him, and he's like, yeah. I said, I can't tell you how much we're going to give you, but it'll be a few $1,000s. I said, well, listen, I got an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
You give me $10,000, I can parlay it into a food truck.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you have a write-up? I'm like, sure do. Ding. And then, boom, they were in.
Wow.
Then Mary Washington Healthcare called me. Said,
wow.
We saw you in the paper. We want to do something to support. And I was like, that's awesome. I need $10,000. And then Mary Washington Healthcare can be a sponsor of our food truck. She says, well, I can only, so the thing is, it'll take months to get you $10,000, but I can do a $5,000 grant but I can do one from Mary Washington and one from Stafford Hospital. And I'm like, well, last time I checked, 5 plus 5 equals 10,000.
Right.
She goes, but you'll have to do 2 applications. I was like,
Okay.
oh no. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. You know?
Yeah.
That's how I do my grants. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And so, yeah, long story short, the truck is paid for.
Wow.
And I had the money well before. In fact, when I ordered the truck, I was like, when is this going to be done? Like, oh, we can have it done in like 6 weeks. I was like, go ahead and take 10 because I don't need it that fast because I don't do cookouts in the winter.
Right.
I'm a big baby. I don't do cold.
Yeah.
And I can't watch other people stand out in the cold in lines waiting
Right.
for food. So we take a break over the winter, kind of reset and get things put together. But we were not inactive during the winter. I'll get to that in a minute. So I told him to give all this extra time for the truck. I had the money in like 3 weeks.
Wow.
$55,000.
That's
right?
amazing.
That's how amazing our sponsors are.
Yeah.
And our community, you know. That's something else that we should go on the record with. I take no money from the government whatsoever. Never have, never will. A lot of people were like, oh, you got to get some of that CARES Act money. I'm like, no, that I don't need it. I don't want it. The whole point of this organization is to demonstrate that we don't need a big government solution to fix all of our problems.
Love
right?
thy neighbor.
Exactly. If you and I come together, we can help Shondell.
Right.
If the 3 of us come together, we can help a family.
Yeah.
And if we all come together, you know, it's just this idea of helping each other out.
Right.
That's what we've lost in our society.
Right.
We've lost that ability to look around and go, huh, that guy needs help. What do we say instead? Somebody ought to do something about that.
Right.
Well, guess what? I'm somebody.
Yeah.
And that, there's a whole psychological thing there too, right?
Yeah.
Grew up being told I was nobody. No, I'm somebody. But with that comes a responsibility.
Absolutely.
If you see something that needs to be done, do it.
Yeah.
There's a great Matthew West song that says, if not you, then who?
Right. Nope. I
Right?
know that. Yep.
It's a great song, you know. If not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Yeah.
So that's my mentality. And that goes back to the point I told you, save about time, right?
Yep.
The trick to managing your time, you see something that needs to be done, do it. Okay. Don't wait till later, right? And I teach this in my leadership classes. You see an email coming, right? Because people are like, I can't keep up with my emails.
Right.
You see an email come in?
Don't
answer
avoid it. Yep.
Just deal with it, right? You know, like I'm usually good about responding to people within an hour. Because sometimes, you know, I mean, like if I'm talking to somebody on the phone, I'm not going to talk and
Right.
email because that's rude. That's just not
Yeah.
cool. But if I'm going through my daily routine, anything that pops up, you know, you get the little icons on your phone, like you have 2 notifications, whatever. Those things drive me crazy.
Yeah. I hate having notifications.
If I see them sitting there,
Yeah.
I have to make them go away.
Yeah. No. Yep.
But if I just look at it and don't do anything about it and the notification's not there, guess what happens?
You'll forget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, I'm falling behind. So if you got something to do it now. And I have this conversation with my kids all the time, right? Hey, you just took a shower.
Yeah.
Pick up your clothes.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to in a few minutes. No. In 10 minutes, I'm going to be yelling at you to do it again because you're going to forget. And it's not that you're an evil person or anything else. That's just human nature.
Yeah.
Accept it. So take a shower, pick up your clothes. You're in the bathroom already, brush your teeth. You're brushing your teeth, do your hair. And before you leave the bathroom, you're done, you're ready to go. It takes me 5 minutes to get out the door in the morning. You know? It takes me an hour before that, but that's a whole other thing.
Oh, please, no.
No, not that. Another you know, kind of leadership thing, right?
Yeah.
I think it might have been Zig Ziglar, some speaker that I heard years ago or a book I read. Either you happen to the day or the day happens to you.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day.
Yeah.
I start my day job at 6 a.m. So from 4 to 5 is my time.
Yeah.
Right? That's my time to check the news real quick so I know what's going on in the world. I don't really read the news much anymore, but I'll usually do a Facebook feed or Twitter feed or whatever, mostly to see what's going on with Stafford Food Security.
Yeah.
But it also clues me into what's going on in the
Yeah.
neighborhood. And then, you know, maybe I'll read a book, might read my Bible. You know, that's my time to get my head right in the morning. And then I jump in the shower, I get ready, and boom, I'm at work by 6.
Yeah.
While I'm working, I don't waste a minute, right? So typical office job, you know, I sent an email. Now I got to wait for them to reply. Well, I'm not going to sit there and wait for them to reply, but you'd be amazed at how many people that do.
Yeah.
So instead of twiddling my thumbs or playing Candy Crush or something else, I'm going to, you know, order next week's fruit from St. George's, or I'm going to stock the shelves, and then I'm constantly doing multiple things.
Yeah.
I hate the word multitasking only because there was a book that came out a few years ago where the guy says there is no such thing as multitasking.
Because you're only doing one thing at that one moment.
And if you're trying to do 3 things, you're not going to do any of them right.
Yeah.
So it is actually shifting tasking, right?
Okay.
The other thing is prioritizing what's important, right?
Yeah.
So I take all the things that I have to do in a day and I go, okay, this is important. And there's this thing called the Eisenhower model that you can actually use. Covey was Stephen Covey was a big fan of it, but you have to rack and stack your day. Checklists are awesome, but don't be a slave to them.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it is to do the little ones first, right? Get those small wins, because if you can start checking things off, next thing you know, you feel like you accomplished something,
Right.
and it builds momentum and snowballs, right?
Okay.
So I start off with this whole big long list, and by noon, I'm through it, not because I'm super fast, but because I started at 6.
And you don't idle. It doesn't sound like you idle at all.
Not really.
Yeah.
No. I mean, those 4 hours a night when I'm trying to sleep,
Yeah.
I try to idle.
And let's get back to that.
Okay.
Allegedly, you haven't slept since 4 o'clock yesterday.
Yeah, no, just a rough night. I just tossed and turned,
Yeah.
and then those are again those times where I'm like,
Yeah.
this is wasted time. So yeah, Shondell was right. I was chopping at 2 o'clock this morning.
Shopping. Are you a retail therapy, or is it more
No.
productive? So
Productive,
you're still being
definitely.
productive.
Yeah. So like, I've been meaning to order. So I mentioned I got a food truck, right?
Yeah. Wait, a food truck?
Comes with a lot of work.
I bet.
So as the more I use it, the more I realize there are things that I need for
Yeah.
it, right? So I've been meaning to order like this hot grease can and grill scraper knives. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, oh, I'm awake. So I log online and the things that you can do now with technology. That's the other piece is the phone. I don't spend a lot of time talking to people on this, but I'm always checking email, ordering things, schools text me and be like, hey, can we get some backpacks? You betcha. So I'm never not working.
Right.
Unless, and this is where the life balance comes in, right? I'm not totally crazy, and my wife, I don't think, wants to kill me. Without this sounding cold, I schedule family time. Family time is important to me.
Yeah.
And so if I wait and hope to get lucky for it to happen, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I prioritize that. So one of my things is I no longer do events on the weekends. Weekends are family time. Those are times that I need to do things. Now, occasionally we'll flex that rule, right?
Yeah.
If Emily's got a soccer game or Amy and her are going to do something on their own, I'm not going to sit at home and idle.
Of course not.
I'm going to go out and do something.
You're going to go save the world.
Well, that's a little bit much, but I'll find something productive
Right.
to do. But I do, it's what I call intentionality. I'm intentional about the family time that I
Right.
have. And that was a conversation that Amy and I had at one point. She's like, you're never here. And I'm like, well, okay, then how much do you want me here? And it's a little bit of a negotiation process. And the negotiation I had was, if you need me here and we're having quality time together, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I want it, you want it, I get that. But if we're just going to sit here all night and watch The Simpsons, I'm not about all that.
But you have to see it from a different perspective. Some people like to be in your bubble.
Yep.
And this was explained to me by a very dear friend of mine, that she's an introvert, and she's fine with her significant other doing his thing at the house. If he's at the house, she's got this calm, and she's in the bubble.
Yep.
And she's fine reading her book and then him on his thing.
Yep.
So for some people, just sitting there, that refuels their tank.
I totally get it.
But
And the answer is, if you want to be in my bubble,
gotta be
I'll be
productive.
out in this neighborhood feeding people. Come along.
And has she come along?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course,
Yeah,
of course.
Amy's wired into this
That's
organization.
awesome.
While I was overseas for 14 months, she ran the organization.
That's amazing.
I mean, and she says she does it for me, but
Yeah.
I know she does it for the kids,
Yeah.
And it's for people, again, right, the excuses that people make. Oh, well, I would do what you do, but I have kids. Take your kids with you.
My kids came
Your
with me and
kids
cleaned up the
need
river
to
this
learn
weekend.
how to serve.
Absolutely. That's how we're gonna change the thinking and the world and
That's
the
right.
division is I think the children.
You do not have to choose between spending time with your family
No.
and serving your community.
No.
The answer is you do both.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter can tell you how to pack any backpack that we do better than anybody.
That's
and she's
fantastic.
12 years old.
Aw.
And she was 8 when we started this thing.
Yeah.
So, and my big kids too, when they would come home on college break,
Yeah.
and they'd come and pack backpacks, I mean, my daughter come out and help. My older daughter, she's actually subbing over at Conway now. She's 22, but she comes out and helps me with cookouts and stuff. So you don't have to choose between the two. You have to do both, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that the epiphany that I reached recently, there's the words that you use matter, right?
Absolutely.
So you ever catch yourself going, well, I don't have time? Stop saying that.
Yeah.
And for me, it really hit home because this gut is starting to get big here.
No.
When I was overseas, I was bulked. I was fit, and so now I say, well, I don't have time to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. That is not an accurate statement.
Yeah.
There's 24 hours in a day. I
Yeah.
could get 2 hours to do that. A more accurate statement is, I'm not choosing to prioritize going to the gym for 2
Right.
hours a day. That's a better way to say it, right? That's a mindset. And so now I'm starting to work out more. I'm making time.
I know a gym.
Yeah. If you know what? The problem is those things right there. I'm not doing it. I'm not working out and wearing a mask. I'm just not
You
doing
don't have to at the YMCA. Our COVID guidelines, you wear it throughout the hallways in the
Okay.
building, but while you were working out, you don't have to wear your
Do you
mask.
still have to have the app and make the appointment and stuff?
We can work with that. I mean, you're so tech savvy. I'm surprised you're letting that be an obstacle.
It's an excuse. You're right. It's an
Yeah.
excuse. So I have a home gym.
Okay.
And then even at the office, I've got a Bowflex dial weights. So the answer is, while I'm doing emails with one hand, I'm doing curls with the other.
Well.
And I'm doing some tricep presses.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm getting some lats going on because I got to get those
Wow.
lats. But yeah. So,
Yeah.
but. And I still am not where I want to be with that.
Right.
I definitely want to get back to spending at least an hour in the
Yeah.
gym a day. But I have to prioritize it.
Absolutely.
And that means that something else has got to go.
Yeah.
There are things that can go. I
Yeah.
mean, definitely. I mean, I'm sleeping like 4 to 6 hours a day. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And if you
I'm
were
joking.
doing a little bit of activity, though, it might help calm your nerves a little. It may not. You know
Maybe.
yourself better. You
You
know
know what?
why you don't sleep. So
The big jug of pre-workout after it, beforehand does not. I'm kidding.
Well, we are nearing the end here, but I want to know what
Did
your
I hit
next.
everything?
I want to know what your next project is. What is the next?
Am I
What is
ready
this
to
summer
talk
going to look
about my
like? What
next
is something to look forward to?
Okay, so this summer is lots of cookouts.
Okay.
We've got the food truck. It's out and rolling at least 2 days a week. I'm still working with the health department trying to get our permit for the truck because one of the things I want to do is I want to start hitting the local wineries and breweries.
Yeah.
One, will make some money for the organization because we do have some, we've got the rent to pay and everything else.
Right.
We've got plenty. Our donors have been awesome. But the bigger impact there is every time I go to the brewery, people are like, you do what? You go
Create
out in the neighborhood and you do
awareness, right?
what?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that buzz.
Yeah.
So that's something else I want to see accomplished. We did over the winter, we added an 8x10 freezer and an 8x10 walk-in. So we have, the facility is 90% complete.
Yeah.
We built this amazing classroom that we can have people come in and we can start having those conversations about breaking the cycle of poverty. I really need all this COVID hysteria to end though. So hopefully, people start getting comfortable with coming into a space and we can actually have those classes. But that's a big priority as soon as we can. We're ready.
Yeah.
And it's just basic budgeting, basic financing, all those life skills that you don't get in those communities because everybody's living day to day, paycheck to paycheck. They're not thinking long term. We want to start helping people change that mindset so that they can break the cycle of poverty. So that's the big focus for this year. If school gets back to normal and the schools start opening up again, I have some expansion in mind.
Fauquier County is not too far.
So, I was just in Fauquier County on Saturday. That they're on my list, but they're not my number one priority right now. Prior to COVID happening last March, I was on the cusp of expanding into Westmoreland County and Caroline County.
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot of we see it. We see it especially with the YMCA and our programs, and we see the need there. So.
And that would wrap up PD 16 for us.
Yeah, Rappahannock district kind of like the Rappahannock area.
So planning district 16.
Yes.
And then I want to have that so we get that regional aspect. Even though right now we're in we're in 3 counties in Fredericksburg. But there are pieces that need to happen. Now, Westmoreland, we're good to go.
Yeah.
And the piece of that is the distribution system, right?
Right.
So it's really hard for me to drive backpacks from Stafford all the way to southern Caroline County, or to have a volunteer do that.
Right.
So the way that we've beaten that in King George and Stafford is one through partnerships with the Y. In King George, we used to store backpacks at the Y, and then Y volunteers would run them to the schools. We hope to get back to that.
Absolutely.
In Spotsy, we partnered with the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
They've agreed to let us store backpacks at the Sheriff's Department, and the SROs will run them out to those far flung
Wow.
areas. So we need a relationship like that in Caroline County.
Yeah.
King George also works out well because I worked out at Dahlgren, and I still work for Dahlgren, although we telework now. So I would just take backpacks over to the Y and drop them off. Worked great.
That's great.
Westmoreland is the same thing. So I've got a bunch of people at the base that live in Westmoreland. I can bring backpacks to work. They'll pick them up there, and then we'll get them out to Westmoreland. So Westmoreland and Caroline are next on our radar.
Yeah.
If at the store, I now have this big battle map courtesy of Core Prints, who did a great job printing that up for us.
Yeah.
And you can see we plan to expand at some point as far out as Culpeper, Orange to the east, the northern neck. Stafford is our northernmost boundary. We don't want to go into urban areas,
Yeah.
right? Because one, there's already a ton of stuff up there, and two, it's a different setting, right?
Yeah.
We're happy with our suburban / rural
yeah.
/ whatever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of our focus for expansion, and quite honestly, everything is waiting right now
Yeah.
on what's going to happen.
Right.
What are the schools going to do?
Right.
If the schools provide lunches this year, then I don't need to provide lunches to kids. But if they don't, then I plan on getting that food truck out into different neighborhoods and serving lunches.
Right.
So we're very adaptable.
Yeah.
Prepared and ready to flex and adapt to whatever the need is in the community. So we'll continue to watch the situation,
Yeah.
keep building those relationships with our school partners. We're still building relationships in Spotsy County. It was a lot easier to build those relationships when COVID wasn't in place, because
Right.
it was not uncommon for me to have an afternoon off and just pop up at a school and be like, "Hey, you the principal? I'm Tim White. Let me tell you what we can do for
Yeah.
you." And those cold calls and the face-to-face, I can call you on the phone, but you're like, yeah, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, face to face.
But I don't know if you recall me sweeping into King George, but that came out of me going to the Y banquet,
Yeah.
and people there going, "How come you're not in King George?"
Yep.
And I was like, how many schools are there in King George? I took my phone, I looked it up, and I was like, there's 5. I was like, okay. So the next day, I looked up all the school colors. I packed up about 10 bags for each one, and I went to each school, and I said, "Hey, here's what we do. Here's how it helps you. We do the work.
Yeah.
We do this." And they're like, "Great. How soon can we get started?" I'm like, "The bags are in my truck right now."
Wow.
And that's the kind of it's that timeliness factor,
Yeah.
right? Not promising you I'm going to do something in 2 weeks. I'm
Right.
going to do it right now.
Right.
We're both here. Let's do this.
Right.
So that's more of what we want to get back to, building those relationships out there and keep growing. So
Why don't you share your website? So if
Okay.
this comes across someone who could use your services,
Yep.
someone who wants to be a sponsor or someone that wants to volunteer, where would they go?
it's www.staffordfoodsecurity.org. And we also have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us on all of those as well.
I know we barely dug into what this is my first interview with you, so I would like to have you come back right before summer hits and see where Tim White's at and get an update, and if you have a need, because it's going to start to get really busy, that I want to make sure that people have that information. But if there's one thing that you could share, I mean, I've taken so much away, especially do it now. If you see something, do it now. But if there was something that you could share with the people that are watching, just a piece of advice about breaking the cycle, what would it be?
For breaking the cycle, evaluate your choices. Look at the decisions that you're making every day. I use the example of cigarettes versus food, right?
Yeah.
That's a decision that's made every day. It's a hard choice. Believe me, I understand the addiction to nicotine. I mean, I still dip. I didn't beat it, Difference is I can afford to dip. There was a time period where I couldn't, and guess what I didn't do?
You didn't dip?
I didn't dip. Yeah, and I was stupid enough to start up again. But anyway, so look at those choices and those decisions you're making every day. If you have kids, it should be a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I mean, do it for the kids. I mean, if you don't have the personal strength to do it for yourself, it's much harder, right?
Yeah.
You're responsible for human life,
Right.
I mean, and understanding that and embracing it. And I don't want to get preachy, but look at those choices that you're making, and then watch the language that you use. Like I said, I have to, or I don't have time. Think of how you can reframe that.
Yeah.
I didn't have to, I'm choosing to. And what are the consequences of that?
Right.
Or I don't have time versus I'm choosing not to prioritize. You know, I mean, again, with kids too, I did that with my kids. Like, oh, I don't have time to take you to soccer practice. Yeah. Ooh. I'm saying that spending time with you is not important to me.
Right.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go play soccer.
And those small moments change so much.
Yeah. And in you and the child.
Right.
I mean, you can't put a price tag on the time for the child, but when you start making those decisions, right, it's always, again, just like going to the gym. The first 10 reps are hard, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And that muscle memory kicks in there. So, it's choices. It really boils down to choices.
Well, I honestly can't thank you enough for coming, and I know you are very busy, so you've made this a priority, which has made me feel better, which means I'm going to go conquer my day.
That's right.
And so, I really appreciate you coming.
Anytime.
So if there was one thing that I think you should take away from Tim White today, is that you are more capable of what you think you are, and the life that you wish to have could be attainable by the choices that you make. And I love always saying this, but a life worth living is a life living for others.
Absolutely.
And so we are wrapping up our first episode of 2021. I am Devlin Reiley with Reiley's Roundup.